Hi everyone, this is Pranav. Now we'll be looking at a problem called reach the end. So the problem statement says that you are given a list of integers where each element represents the maximum jump you can make from that position in the list. For example, if the list is 2, 3, 1, 1, 4, you can jump at the maximum of 2 steps from index 0, 3 steps from index 1 and etc. So you are tasked with writing a recursive function can reach end, which returns true if you can reach the last index starting from index 0 and false otherwise. Okay, now let us consider these two examples. So first we consider this list which is 2, 3, 1, 1, 4. So I can take at the maximum 2 steps from index 0. So this does not compel me to exactly take 2 steps. I can either take 1 or 2 steps. Similarly, at index 1 I have a value of 3. So it says that a maximum of 3 jumps is possible from here. I can either take 1 or 2 steps also. So that is allowed. So your maximum jump which you can take is 3. So let us just check if this particular example over here helps us reach the end. So we start at index 0 with a maximum of 2 steps. So what we'll essentially do is iterate over this particular maximum value as the upper bound in our range. So we check for 1 or 2 steps and we'll make our recursive calls inside these iterations correspondingly. So we'll first consider what happens if we take only 1 step and then also consider what happens if we take 2 steps. So let us just manually check. So if we take 2 steps, we go from index 1 up till index 2 and now we are at this particular index and this has the value of 1. Now from here the only option we have is to take 1 step ahead, so we go to this index. And again from here the only option we have is to take 1 step and go to the end. So it is possible to reach the end in this particular list. So note that the problem asks you if it can reach the end. It does not ask you the path or how many different ways to reach. It just asks you to check if it is able to reach the end. So for this particular list the answer would be true. Now let us look at an alternative solution or probably an alternative way to reach the end in this particular example itself. Let us just try if there exists one. So let us say I take not 2 but just 1 step from 2. Okay, so now I land at this particular index which is 1, which has a value of 3. So now from here I can take 3 steps. So I go 1, 2 and 3. Even then I am able to reach the end. So see, there are multiple ways to reach the end in this particular list itself. All you have to check if it is able to reach the last index. So our answer here would be true. Now let us go to the other example. So the first index over here has the value 3. So when you have the maximum value as 3, you are free to take 1, 2 or 3 steps. We will look at each of these again as we saw previously. So if I take 3 steps, I go from here up till index number 3 and here I am stuck with 0 steps. So I can't move from here. So taking 3 steps does not help us reach the end. So we'll just rule out that possibility and check what happens if we take 2 steps. Now if we take 2 steps from 3, I go to index 2 and here again I have only 1 step possible. So from here I go here and again I am caught at 0. So I will not be able to reach the end even if I take 2 steps from the start. So I'll remove this as well. Now let us consider the last option we have, which is 1. So when I take 1 step from here, I land at index 1. This has a value 2. So I can make 2 steps, go to index 0, index with value 0 again. So I won't be able to move further. So even this possibility is ruled out. So we just saw the all possible values which the first jump can take does not help us reach the end. So we are stuck at the first index itself. That is, not exactly at the first index, but we are not able to make any process after this particular index which is 0, which makes us stop. So here our answer would be false. So no possibilities to reach the end. Now let us look at another example which says 32204. Now again I have the possibilities to take 1, 2 or 3 steps from the 0th index. Now what happens if I take 3 steps? Again I end up at 0, which is not what we require. Now let us see what happens if we take 2 steps. So now if I take 2 steps, I end up at this index and from here again I can either take 1 or 2 steps. If I take 1 step, I end up at 0, which is not what we require. Now what happens if we take 2 steps? We reach the end. So at this particular case, we have the value returned to be true. See, again there are multiple ways to reach the end here as well. We are not concerned about the various ways. Let us say I take only 1 step. again when I take one step and from here this index has the value 2, so I can take 1 or 2 steps from here as well. So if I take one step again over here and then take 2, I can reach the end. So as I had already said, there are multiple ways to reach the end. There might be multiple ways to reach the end. All we are concerned if we are able to reach the end or not. So that is what we are dealing with at the end. So in this particular case, we just return true. We don't care about how many ways are there to reach the end. Okay, so now let us look at the code to this problem. So I'll write can reach end. This takes as argument the list which we already are passing. Let us call it nums, and one value, that is I. So initially this I value is going to be 0. So we are starting at the index 0, but in a recursive call we will be landing at some random index, as we saw. We might be landing at index 1, index 2 and so on. So I represents the index we are currently in. So a recursive function has a base case. The base case over here is going to be when we are at the last index. So when we are at the last index, we just return true. So if I is equal to len of numbers minus 1, so that represents the last index, you just return true. So if we are at the last index, we know that we have reached the end, so we return true. What we do in the else part is what we have to think about. So we already saw that the maximum jump which you can take at ith index is what is stored in that particular index as the value. So max jump equals nums of I. Now we saw that we can either take 3 steps. Let us just go back to that example which we saw. So when we are at this particular index, we can either take 3 steps or we can take 1, 2 or 3. So we technically go from the range of 1 up till the index value, let us call it nums of I plus 1. So that is what we range with. So let us just code that as well. So let us just write the for loop. So for j in range of 1 comma max underscore jump plus 1. So inside this for loop, we check if the end can be reached. So we include an if statement, if can underscore reach underscore end. The list remains unchanged. So what we pass as the current index is what we have to check. So we are checking for all possible values that j can take, right? So we are at index I, and from index I we are checking for j steps. So let us say we are at currently at this particular index somewhere over here. So we are basically checking if I am at index 1, and the possible values I can take are 1 and 2, because the value over here is 2, right? So my j basically takes these 2 values. Now I have to check for the reaching the end with these 2 possibilities of j. So basically what I have is I plus j, that is what I have to pass as the parameter. So over here it will be I plus j, you return true. Now when none of these cases are satisfied, you obviously will return false. So we will include that at the end. And yes, so our code is now done. So we have defined the base case over here, and this deals with our in between iterations. So we have the max jump stored in the variable, and now for every possible value j can take, we are checking if the end can be reached with that particular value, and if so, we return true. Else if none of these cases are passed, we return false. So now let us just run our test case for this particular code. So I have just included input statement to store it in an array and trying to reach the end. So I'll pass the first test case value, which is 23114. It has to return true. So 23114. So we can see we get the output true as is in our sample output. So let us just go on to run the other 2 test cases, which is 32104 and then 32204. So let me just run the code. 32104. you can see we get the output as false. So that is what is expected. We end up in a lock at this particular index where the value is 0. Now what happens when we give 32204 is also what we have discussed. It should return true, 32204. So we get the output true. That is what is expected in the sample as well. So that is the solution to this problem. Thank you.